The New York Mets actually held it together this past season and made the playoffs. But with key players slated to be free agents, how will the team look in 2025? Today, I break down those Mets from a fantasy baseball perspective, of course, on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Don Martino, riding solo today, as you can see, if you're watching on YouTube. And if you are watching on YouTube and you haven't already, you might as well hit that little bell below. It will subscribe you to the channel and give you a notification every time we drop a new episode. And if you're listening on a platform like Apple or Spotify, that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, we would truly appreciate it if you could do that for us. And while you're at it, you might as well give Matt and I a chance on the Subtext platform. Through Subtext, it's an in-depth personalized experience through text messaging alerts, offering so much more than we can in this 30-minute podcast. And if you want to give us that chance on Subtext, you can find the link in the bio wherever you're listening, watching, or it's available on any of our social media platforms. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. And guys, I led with it at the top. You know, we're still in the time of year, off-season mode, doing the team reviews. Starting to get to some of the better teams, though. We're starting to get to some of the teams that performed, a little bit better, playoff teams. And, one of those teams was the New York Mets. Finished with 89 wins, 73 losses. And I feel like it was a solid season for those Mets. You know what? They competed with those Braves. They played good down the stretch. They played good in the playoffs. They wound up losing to the Dodgers, who won the World Series. I'm not going to congratulate them because they beat my New York Yankees, but I will acknowledge that they did win. But that being said, we are talking about the Mets, and Francisco Lindor had a monstrous season. Pete Alonso, lackluster. They got a bunch of young guys. We're going to get into some of those players today. The pitching staff, there's question marks with. So, with this team, and I think with a lot of the better teams, there's not too much to discuss. Like I said, a lot of key free agents going into next season for these Mets. We will break them down today. So you know what? I got to stop beating around the bush, guys. I'm just going to get right into it. Let's talk about Francisco Lindor, the best player on the Mets, one of the best players in the league. And I will say this, if you go back to 2020, which was Lindor's last season with Cleveland, he's had some up and down years since then. But you know what? It's, his fourth year in New York with the Mets, 30 years old for Lindor. Honestly, I wouldn't say the best season of his career, but it competes with some of his best seasons. So 152 games, 618 at-bats this past season for Lindor, 107 runs, 39 doubles, a triple, 33 home runs, 91 RBIs, 29 steals with 56 walks to 127 strikeouts, and he hit 273. Batting average was up for Lindor this year. Lindor, basically goes 30-30, was shorted one steal of getting to that plateau. And I like Lindor. I have Lindor. I don't have the rankings pulled up on me. So, that's a subtext thing, guys. If you want my way too early rankings, you're going to have to check us out on subtext for those. But Francisco Lindor was coming off the board as the fourth shortstop, pick 24 overall. So there were leagues where you got Lindor in the third round of a 12-man league. Because if his average was 24, that means there was leagues where he probably went a little bit lower than that. There's obviously leagues where he went a little bit higher than that. But if you paired Lindor with another elite bat, maybe you got a good SP in there, you definitely had a good season. I think Lindor moves up, obviously. I think he's going to be a guy that people are going to be taking, I'd say on the 1-2 turn, honestly. I think between that first, second round turn, you're going to look at a guy like Lindor. You're going to get some power. You're going to get some speed. The batting average is the thing that's been a little bit up and down over the past few years, as I mentioned. But I think Lindor, could hit 260 easily. He's a key cog in that, Mets lineup, the big runs totals, the big RBI totals. He was a 5-category contributor this year. He was plus in every single category, no matter how you look at it. So, people are going to be excited about Lindor for next year. I will too. In redraft leagues, shortstop is looking, okay. It's not looking putrid. There's a lot of names that we are going to throw darts at. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff to do when it comes to shortstop. But I think Lindor is just one of those guys. Lock it in. You lock it in. You set it and forget it. We know who he is at this point in his career. He's actually been fairly healthy, go over his whole career. I'm just going to say it. Lindor's pretty much whole career, he's been healthy. That 2021 season, he missed a little bit of time. But other than that, going all the way back to 2016, Lindor's played at least 143 games every year, excluding the COVID season. So Lindor, first-round pick, not going to spend too much more time here on Lindor, so we will move on. Let's talk about the polar bear. Let's talk some Pete Alonso, one of those guys impeding free agency. We don't know if he will be here next year. But you know what? Alonso's a career Met, so we are going to break him down as we talk about the Mets. Last 3 years, Alonso has been an all-star, but you know what? I'm not sure what it is, man. Because you know what? I look back at Alonso's 2021 and 2022, age 26 and 27 for Pete Alonso. And we all thought there was another level here. We thought that, Alonso, maybe not another level, but you know what? Even when you look at Alonso's rookie year, he had 53 home runs. So when you see a 2022 season where Pete Alonso hit 40 home runs, had 131 RBIs, and hit 271, you're thinking, okay, there might be a chance this guy could be, like a 280-ish hitter with, 50 home runs. Like you're almost salivating at that upside. But you know what? In 2023, Alonso follows up those 2 really good years with a 217 batting average. And even though he hit for 46 home runs, which was the second highest of his career, he took a step back from a fantasy perspective, right? Because we were expecting that batting average to not only stay the same, but maybe even get a little bit better, right? So then let's look at the 2024. Can Alonso get back to those plus batting averages? No, he couldn't do it this year. He had 240 over 162 games. Literally played every game this year. Had 608 at-bats, 91 runs, 31 doubles, 34 homers, 88 RBIs, 3 steals. So in a points league, yeah, sure. Alonso's great because he walks a little bit too. 70 walks, 170 strikeouts. 170 strikeouts are not great, but at least he's giving you some walks to offset it, right? He's going to be a tough one for me. I think it's landing spot. With Alonso. He goes to one of these better teams, needing a first baseman. I can think of the Astros and the Cubs right off the top of my head are some landing spots I've heard buzzed around for Alonso. Maybe he just comes back home to the Mets. Maybe the Mets say, hey, we can't live without him, especially if they miss on Soto. The Juan Soto sweepstakes, I think, is going to dictate a lot of free agency moves. So, I think that's where, Alonso his value is going to lie in what team he goes to. So Alonso is coming off the board as the 4th first baseman this past year, pick 23. I think that falls. Maybe not significantly because first base is, for me anyway, I feel like first base is top heavy. I really think there's a strong 7 first baseman that I like going into 2025. There's some guys that we can, speculate on, but I think it's a strong 7. I'll talk about them when we start to do position previews and all that stuff. But it's just going to be interesting with Pete Alonso to see his, 2025 season. I know the home runs will be there. I know the RBIs will be there. And honestly, that's pretty much any team that he's playing on. The batting average is what's really going to, dictate a lot of value for him. The runs, honestly, Alonso's been at over 81 runs every year in his career except for the COVID year. So I think the runs will be solid too. He hits a lot of doubles. So obviously his value there with Alonso. It's just a matter of, can he provide top tier value, or is it going to be more of I don't want to say middling value for Alonso, but is it going to just be more of the same thing where we can draft guys that can hit 30 plus homers and have some decent RBIs, but hit for the 240 average later in drafts. So I'm really going to wait to see where Alonso goes before I declare where I'm going to be drafting him. With that being said, let's sneak one more guy in here. We're gonna sneak one more guy. We're just going for it. We're talking Mark Vientos, and Mark Vientos is such an interesting name because he had a very solid. I don't know if I think he lost his rookie eligibility. Hold on, I could see that if he lost it in 23 or this past year. No, he did. Okay, so Mark Vientos, of course, these New York Mets that we are talking about. He's actually considered to be in his second season here this past year. 111 games, 413 at bats, 58 runs, 22 doubles, 27 home runs, 71 RBIs with 33 walks, 235 strikeouts, and a 266 batting average. So now Vientos, I think and I know he's somebody to be very excited about for next year. Vientos has, had a very successful minor league career where he has shown off, the power that we saw this past season. He showed off a little bit of batting average. And I like that a guy like Mark Vientos hit 266, in his first season where he's played over 100 games, right? So that shows me that, he can keep up with major league pitching. As a young player like he is. And, the power is going to play. And I think a guy like Vientos almost speaks to what I was talking about with Alonso on a little bit of a lower scale. In 140 games, could Vientos hit 35 home runs with 90 plus RBIs and hit for a 250, 260 batting average? Now, you get what I'm saying when I'm talking about a guy like Pete Alonso. So I don't want to have to go back and talk about Alonso again, but you know what? That's why I'm going to be a little bit lower on Pete Alonso this past year, because I don't think that batting average improvement that we thought was going to come is coming. But back to Mark Vientos at 24 years old this past season, 25 next year. I think there's going to be buzz. I can't lie. I think there's going to be buzz around Vientos. Vientos is somebody that, I think we were getting for pretty much free 99 in draft season because we didn't really know what it was going to look like for him as far as playing time. Yeah, I can't even see him here. And then we lose a lot of good players at third base going into 2025. Ellie loses third base. Gunnar loses third base. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in most platforms is going to lose third base. So, even with a guy like Jazz Chisholm, who's, now gaining third base eligibility, it's going to be tough. And I think Vientos is going to be, a fantasy baseball guy's darling. You're going to see him on like a lot of sleeper breakout type lists. So it's there. I'm not telling you not to do it. I'm just saying beware that, as we get closer and closer to opening day, I think Vientos' value is going to go up, and deservingly so. I'm not knocking the kid at all because I definitely think the upside is there. So I'll be trying to draft me some Mark Vientos if I can. But with that being said, we still got lots of fun young players on this team like Luis Angelacuna, Ronnie, Mauricio, and Francisco Alvarez. So make sure you stay locked on because those names and more are coming up next. And guys, I want to talk to you about my friends at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you the only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. With Game Time Picks curation, it makes it easier to save more on sports, concert, comedy, theater, and etc. Game Time has plenty of great features, such as their all-in pricing. When you toggle this feature, will show you the total up front, so you got no surprise fees at checkout. With their seat views, you're actually going to get a panoramic view from the seat you'll be sitting in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time's coverage with that you will purchase will be covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And guys, once again, I want to talk to you about the Locked On Fantasy Baseball Podcast Diamond Club on the Subtext platform this offseason. It's going to be your ultimate fantasy baseball companion. So you're going to rely on Matt and I for dynamic content, dynamic but also dynamic. But you're going to get real-time alerts right to your phone, offering our rankings, our way too early sleepers, breakouts, bust, and just so much more than you can get in this 30-minute podcast. And guys, I know the time of year is starting to swing around where you're thinking about keepers and dynasty, so you're going to be able to ask us those questions exclusively on the Subtext platform. So make sure you check us out, link in bio, wherever listening or watching. So join the Diamond Club on Subtext, where your path to victories begin. Subscribe now and elevate your fantasy baseball experience to a new level. So, all right, guys, we're back in here. Actually, this is going to be a fun one today because we don't got too much of that stuff to do. So let's just move right into the next player. We're going to talk Luis Angel Acuña. And with Mr. Luis Angel, a lot of buzz around the kid because, of course, he is Ronald Acuña Jr.'s brother. And that with itself, brings a lot of hype. And you know what? I think Acuña was pretty solid in his first 14 games in the big as a 22-year-old. He had 39 at-bats, 6 runs, 12 hits overall, 2 doubles, a triple, 3 homers, 6 RBIs. He did not steal a base, which is very interesting. And he hit 308. Very, very, very small sample size there from Acuña, right? But we like it. We like what we see. He stole in the minors in 2024, 40 bags in 131 games. The year previous, in 2023, in 121 games, Acuña stole 57. The year before, he stole 40 bases. The year before that, he stole 44. So Acuña, I think, is starting to grow into a little bit of power. He's never really been known for that. He's 5'8", small guy, Jose Altuve's type stature, but it's not about how big you are to hit home runs. It's about how you hit the ball, how you swing the bat. There's so much more dynamic stuff that actually goes into hitting home runs, and maybe Acuña is starting to tap into that, right? It's such a small sample size, in the bigs with those quick 3 home runs off the bat. It could be a situation where a guy like Acuña, hits those 3 home runs, then he doesn't hit home runs at all. But let's deep dive. That's what we're here to do. We're here to talk about a guy like Luis Angel Acuña. The sprint speed, elite. He is so fast. Was just talking about that. He doesn't strike out a crazy amount. The bat speed is good. He hits the ball hard. His average exit velocity looked good. The batting average is believable. So with Mr. Angel Acuña, I don't know if it's guaranteed next year that he has a starting spot because you know what? He's a guy where they're going to have to move him around the field a lot, and it's just going to be interesting to see. So with a guy like Acuña, if he has a spot and we know he's up for, almost everyday playing time, I'll have him because I want to see where this thing goes. And I say this about, when you have like a famous parent or sibling that is involved with sports, and then you get involved in sports, you're getting the best training. Look at a guy like Matt Holliday, former All-Star. If you don't know who he is, his son, Jackson Holliday, you might be more familiar with that name, is, one of the best upcoming prospects in the major leagues. And it's because Matt Holliday is not only an All-Star himself, but he had access to the best coaches, a lot of money to get the training that, his sons needed. And there's another Holiday coming up through the pipeline, just so you guys know. But with Acuña, I'm assuming he's hanging out with his brother Ronald in the off season, and he's getting the best training. He's getting the best everything that he possibly can. And at 22 years old, he impressed in his little short stint in the big. So I'll be in on Acuña in, 2025 at 23 years old playing for those Mets. I like it. Let's talk about a prospect who didn't get to play. Let's talk about Ronnie Mauricio. He did not get to play at all this year. A significant injury held him out, and he should be ready for 2025. That is the hope, right? He's a big boy at 6'3", but he doesn't weigh a lot at like 170. So I want to see him. I want to see if he put on some weight. I want to see if he put on some muscle, right? He's recovered from this injury. That's what I would like to see from him. And his little stint in the bigs in 2023, Ronnie Mauricio played 26 games, had 101 at-bats, 11 runs, 25 hits, 4 doubles, 2 homers, 9 RBI, 7 steals, and he hit 248. So with Ronnie Mauricio, he's an interesting profile. He's got good amount of pop. He's got a little bit of speed in his in his foot. But the thing with Mauricio is going to be the batting average, right? We don't know where that's really going to land. It's been all over the place in his minor league career. The hit tool is a little bit questionable with Mauricio. I look at him like this. Probably a little bit of a deep elite play. Not going to be, a guy that we're looking at, and I want to say, anything shallower than like, a 10-man. But, in your 12s, in your deep 12s where you got, corner, infield positions and stuff like that, I actually want to see his appearances because I know Mauricio is another guy that just played all over the field. So he played 21 games at second base in 2023. So that it looks like that's where his eligibility is going to lie. On Yahoo, he might have third base because 5 games played at third on Yahoo. So they might give him that going into 2025 on that platform. But everywhere else, Mauricio is pretty much going to be second. So excuse me when I said corner. He'll be more of a middle infielder, actually. And second base is actually going to be tough. So he might be like a deeper, kind of play where I could see a season for Mauricio if he plays like, let's say 130 games, 20 plus homers, solid runs and RBIs, really depending on where he hits in that lineup, 10 plus steals. And here's the thing. What's that batting average going to look like? I could see it being as high as 260. I could see it being as low as 240. So that range is going to really dictate Ronnie Mauricio's value. Like I said, mainly a deeper league play for Mauricio, but I do like what I've seen from him so far, and I want to see more. And guys, real quick, we got one more little thing for you, and then we're coming back with names like Francisco Alvarez, Kodai Senga, and it's just going to be so much fun. So make sure you stay locked on. And all right, folks, we are back. Let's talk Francisco Alvarez. I like Alvarez. I think it was just a disappointing year for him this year. I don't know what was going on with the kid. Francisco Alvarez is really one of highly, highly, highly touted prospect. This kid was supposed to be one of the best players, not only as a catcher, but just one of the best young players in the game. And at 22 years old, he played 100 games. Francisco Alvarez did 308 at-bats, 39 runs, 14 doubles, 2 triples, 11 homers, 47 RBIs, and he hit 237. I think it was a situation where he sacrificed some power for batting average, but that's not what we want from a guy like Francisco Alvarez. Go out there and be Cal Raleigh, We don't need you to hit for a crazy batting average, but smack a bunch of homers for us, because at least that's going to give us some fantasy value. I hope at 23 next year, Francisco Alvarez is still young enough that we can see him take that step back into the right direction for fantasy purposes. So I would like to say that he's a 30 home run catcher with, potential for good RBIs in this Mets lineup. That's nice. And he walks a little bit too, which is cool. 30 walks last season for Francisco Alvarez to 86 strikeouts. That's just that I don't know. I can't take the 237 batting average with very little power. I could take a 237 batting average if he's hitting over 30 home runs. Yeah, that's going to help me in good RBI totals. Francisco Alvarez ready to come off the board at catcher this last season because wherever it was, it's going to be a lot lower. I'll tell you that much right now. Francisco Alvarez is coming off the board as the 10th catcher. This, going into 2024, pick 166. You can get him later than that. I think it's a free 99 play if you waited on catcher and you kind of can just throw your dart Alvarez's way and see where the thing goes. But I really want to. I really want to get into some pitching here, so that's what we're going to do. Kodai Senga. Man, can I say a disappointing season for a guy who really didn't, pitch as much as we really wanted him to? He literally threw, I think it was one start in the regular season this year. At the end of the season, it was a 5-inning start where he gave up 2 runs. He struck out 9. He looked solid. I think this could be a case of value, but man, a 32-year-old pitcher next year for Sanga, it's tough because I feel like pitching going into 2025 doesn't look as good as we would have liked it to. So that's I think really going to hurt us. So we might have to take a guy like Kodai Senga as an SP2, and yeah, he could do it. Let's go back to 2023 when Senga made his debut here with the New York Mets. 29 starts, 2.98 ERA, 166 innings, 202 strikeouts with a 1.22 WHIP. Now you'll take a high WHIP guy. It was adjusting the pitching in the States, different kind of ball. I believe they use a pre-tagged ball. Where Senga's from. And we kind of, our balls aren't really done the same way as theirs. So, it's a little bit of an adjustment period. I'm sure Yamamoto, was dealing with the same type of stuff. So I like Sanga. There's definitely upside here. There's definitely SP1 upside here. It's just a matter of where we're going to have to take him. I'll give you, if you're still hanging around at this point in the episode, I'm going to tell you guys, let's see where, I don't know if I threw Sanga into my rankings, and even if I didn't throw Sanga into my way too early rankings, we're going to talk about where I would throw him in, because these are fun exercises, guys. This is why I like doing these kinds of episodes, and this is why you should kind of, do this yourself. And that's why me and Matt, tell you guys, that's kind of how this podcast started. If you don't know, a quick story time. Matt and I started this podcast by just having conversation on, our ways home from work. Matt and I used to get out of work around the same time. We would call each other and we would have conversations like, where do you got Kodai Senga ranked, going into the season? So we would do our own rankings even back then before we had the podcast. So I challenge you guys to go out and do that. Do your own rankings. I actually have a buddy I work with, and I gave him a shout out last time. I'll do it again. It's one of my best friends, my buddy Jonathan. We do the same thing. We go back and forth at work almost all day long. Oh, where do you have this guy ranked? Where do you have that guy ranked? And it's just such a fun thing to do to get your brain working, because you know what, when you have a buddy and you guys are like open about talking about stuff, because I know, there's some league members that aren't so open about talking about, their rankings and stuff like that. But Matt and I, we do the podcast now, so we can't do that anymore. And me and my buddy Jonathan don't really play in a lot of the same leagues. So, him and I do that easy. And even if we did, I would still tell him everything because, it's one of my best friends. But, do it. And so back to what we're actually talking about, a Kodai Senga here. I don't think I threw him in. I didn't throw Sanga in yet, or did I? Hold on. Maybe he's just higher than I thought. All right, so if I had to throw Sanga in, because I'm actually not seeing him here. Okay, I do. 32. I have Sanga ranked as my 32nd starting pitcher for next season. That could rise or fall. If he looks super healthy coming into, spring training, I could see, maybe moving him into SP2's territory. Would love Sanga as like a risky SP3, and then, I could shore up the rest of my rotation as I go along. It's just going to be... It's going to be harder because, I'm not big on taking guys that are either injured going into the year or, have been chronically injured recently. And I kind of feel that way with Sanga a bit. He did pitch in the postseason and not look great too, especially, in the NLCS where, he pitched 3 innings, gave up 6 runs. It could be, a case of Sanga just really needs to get, the innings, spring training under his belt, face, hitters and stuff. Because as I said, that one start at the end of the season was good. But then, as you get in the playoffs, clutch time, things are really getting the swing of things. He couldn't hold it together. So, like I said, got him at 32 right now. I love him. I love Kodai Senga as an SP3. A little bit of a lower end SP2, a very risky SP2. So we're going to be careful with Sanga going into 2025. But remember, there is upside if you want to play that risk. Let's move on to David Peterson. With David Peterson, I always liked David Peterson. He has pretty good stuff. It was just more of a control thing with David Peterson, right? Never really was able to, pinpoint those pitches per se. And you know what? He has talent. Let's talk about, the pitch mix here, because I do like the mix here for David Peterson. Throws that sinker 31% of the time, gets good results with that. His fastball sits at 93 on average. He throws that 26% of the time, but he gets good results with that too. Here's where, the thing is, the slider, right? I really think David Peterson needs, a better off-speed pitch. Even though David Peterson's slider in 2023 performed well, and the sinker didn't, he kind of made that change where the sinker performed better this past season and the slider didn't. So I'm not sure what's going on there. We could take a look at, so the movement wasn't really getting there on, the slider this past year. And actually, really wasn't great last year either, to be honest with you, even though it did get better results last year for him, and actually wasn't even really that too much better. David Peterson really improved on the fastball, and he improved on the sinker. And if Mr. Peterson at 29 years old can keep those gains, I think we have an interesting guy. And he also, let's look at this for David Peterson. David Peterson was really more known as a guy who got a lot of strikeouts. This past season, let's read the whole numbers. 21 starts for David Peterson, 10 wins, 2.90 ERA with 121 innings, only 101 strikeouts, and a 1.28 whip. Peterson's always going to have that high whip, as I mentioned. So I like him. A dart throw at the end of your draft. I don't think anybody's going to be really too high on him. Look at him as like an SP6 or something around that. Because I don't think there's like a crazy high upside, but you know what? I like where we can have like a mid-3s ERA, around a K per 9, and he's going to hurt you in the whip, but he pitches for a good Mets team, and as you saw, he won 10 games, lost 3. Love that. Let's just sneak in Edwin Diaz. Don't have a crazy amount of time here left on this one, but we have to talk about him before I head out. Top closer in the league, comes back, has an okay season. Has an okay season. Let's read the numbers: a 3.52 ERA, 53 innings, 84 strikeouts. You love that. A 104 whip, pretty solid too. He's just getting older. Age 31 next year for Edwin Diaz. The ERA was a lot higher this year. I still like him. I'll still be ranking him as like a top 5 closer going into 2025. Really not too much to worry about. And just with that being said, guys, we're going to call it there. We don't need to do too much on Edwin Diaz. Come on. If you don't know Edwin Diaz at this point, we come talk to me. Come DM me and we'll talk about Edwin Diaz there. But guys, that's all for today. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, and review. Also, thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. And after you make us your first listen, go check out our boy Sully over on Locked On MLB. Does a great job over there. So, once again, shout out to our everyday listeners. And guys, see you next time.